Welcome everyone here to NLA. I'm Catherine Stanyland, I'm the Deputy Director here. And this talk today is the first in a series of Soapbox talks that are taking place in support of our Streets Ahead exhibition. And we've invited lots of experts to come and talk to us about their vision for future streets and roads in London. And today we have two fantastic speakers here to talk about their view for future river crossings in London, and particularly looking at East London. And if you look at the model behind us, it's quite obvious that of London's bridges, I think we have about 34 bridges in London, there's actually only one east of Tower Bridge. So where lots of London's population growth is due to take place, we actually need to do quite a bit to unlock development in that area. So after each speaker has presented, they're going to have about 10 minutes each to present. We'll then come to you for questions, and we're keen to get lots of debate and discussion, so please, think about what you want to ask while they're speaking. So first up, I'm going to introduce Matt Yates, who is Head of Planning Projects for TfL.
Thank you. When I agreed to this gig, I didn't actually realise I'd be on a box. So I do feel like it's right for heckling. So please, if you're going to heckle, do it in 10 minutes or wait for the speaker after me would be even better. My role at TfL is to look at the early stages of planning. Not just river crossings, but also things like Crossrail 2, extensions of the Northern Line, extensions of the Overground network. So I have a range in my portfolio. But today I just want to talk a little bit about the river crossings programme that we're looking at. So you all know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. London is growing quickly. Over the last 15 years, we've got an extra 1.5 million people living here. In the next 15 years, we'll have an additional 1.5 million, and the next 15 years after that, another 1.5 million, which will take us to about 11.5 million. And as you can see, I'm working in multiples of 1 and 5, so that's kind of where we're going with this. So just in terms of what's been happening with the river, I'll take you back to Roman times, where the Romans built the first wooden bridge at the site of the current London Bridge. And kind of what's been happening over that time is that crossings have been built, particularly towards the west and central London, where the river is much narrower, not so navigable, and kind of easier to cross. And that's where kind of the industry and the commercial aspects and the houses have grown up. But in terms of the growth that we've got coming over the next sort of 20, 30 years, we need at least, probably more, 40,000 homes to be built in London over the next 20 years. And with that also comes a range of other services that we need: hospitals, schools, leisure, commercial, offices. And a big part of that is actually providing river crossing connections. And as mentioned earlier, particularly in East London. So we've done quite a lot in terms of public transport, particularly crossing the river. And in West London in particular, we have a lot of crossings, and we have the Diamond Jubilee Bridge, which is received its planning permission. We have the Nine Elms Pimlico Bridge, which is under feasibility. For central London, I know there was a protester outside, but we have new plans for things that are going on across in central London. We have the Garden Bridge. Love it or hate it, we are progressing with that scheme, and I think it will be an icon for many years to come. And then moving further east, we also have the Canary Wharf to Rotherhithe crossing that Annette will be talking about a bit later. We've also done an awful lot in public transport, and we're planning more. So obviously Crossrail will be opening in 2018, providing a cross-river connection, and we're also looking at Crossrail 2. So early days for that, and as you know, when you build these big schemes, they're not without their controversy, particularly when you talk about things like Crossrail 2 and certain areas that you might be serving. So we're looking at that, and we're listening to what people have to say about that as well. And that's a scheme that we could build by 2030 in terms of Crossrail 2. But in East London, whilst there's been a huge amount of investment in public transport over the last 20 years, we've had the Jubilee Line extension, we've had the Overground extension, we have DLR extensions, we've got Crossrail coming in 2018. We haven't had any highway infrastructure built since we provided the southbound bore of the Blackwall Tunnel in the 1960s. So the northbound bore of the Blackwall Tunnel was actually built for horse and carts. So essentially what happens is you get high-sided and high HGVs, over-height HGVs, that actually cause a lot of problems, particularly northbound. So on the Blackwall Tunnel, we have over 1,000 incidents a year happening at Blackwall Tunnel, and half of those are caused by over-height vehicles. Some are caused by people not filling up their car with diesel or petrol or whatever they use, but the majority of those are caused by the over-height vehicles. And as a consequence of that, a 5-minute delay causes a 5-kilometre tailback. And there are regular delays at the Blackwall Tunnel. So, you know, we do have regular delays of around 25 minutes. So what we're proposing, and I know it's very controversial, and I know it's very topical, and I look around the room today and I see some people that are not happy about, you know, what we are proposing. But we are proposing to provide an additional crossing, a tunnel, just east of Blackwall Tunnel. At the moment, you have one bus route that crosses the Blackwall Tunnel. The Route 108 is a single deck, 6 buses an hour. We will be looking to put around 35 to 40 buses an hour in Silvertown to provide that extra sort of public transport connectivity. And we'd also be looking to place a charge both on Silvertown and also on the Blackwall Tunnel. And that's for 2 purposes. One, and I'm not going to lie to you, you'll know this, is to try to get the funding and the finance together to build the scheme. But the other aspect, which is very, very important, it'll be used to help manage the traffic, the levels of traffic. We appreciate that the network around those tunnels cannot cope with that additional traffic. So we're looking to manage the demand in such a way that we either transfer people onto buses, we change the way they travel, or we provide better connectivity at different times of the day. So there will be a charge on that. That's very controversial because people in West London don't pay for their roads except for the tax and congestion. But it doesn't stop there. We're also looking at a package of other crossings as well. So further east of Woolwich, we're looking at 2 more crossings, either a bridge or a tunnel. One at Galleon's Reach between Thamesmead and Beckton, and one at Belvedere between Belvedere and Rainham. Now, those crossings are again in early days. We're out to consultation, so you all have an opportunity until the 12th of February to let your feelings be known about those particular crossings. And we're looking at how we might improve public transport as part of that. So there may be an opportunity, particularly along the Galleons crossing, to provide an extension of the Docklands Light Railway. And we're looking for that, and we're also looking at what we can do with the bus network. So in summary, I probably missed out a lot of things that I wanted to say. But in summary, we've got a document here, Connecting the Capital. We launched it in December. It's available on the website and all good bookshops. No, it's not in bookshops, but you can find it on the website. We don't have hard copies, I'm afraid. But this talks about the over a dozen new river crossings that TfL are either involved with or are leading that we would like to see built over the next 20 years. And it isn't just about roads. I'd like to make that absolutely clear. It's about walking, it's about cycling, it's about public transport, but it is also about providing an option for highway as well. So that's what the crossings further east are for, but we're aiming to incorporate public transport as much as we can. And this document will help us facilitate over 100,000 new jobs in London. So at the moment, the river is an absolute icon, and what we're trying to do with this document and over the next 20 years is to make sure the river isn't actually a barrier for us as well. So yeah, you can heckle me now.
So we're going to come to you for questions. First, I just wanted to ask, though, is there a way you think of actually linking up these crossings with better use of the river altogether?
Yeah, TfL actually have an action plan as well. So it's not just about crossing the river, it's about going up and down the river. We're also speaking very closely with the PLA because one of the issues we have with our river crossings in particular is when you get to East London, when it's so wide, it's kind of 9 times wider at Dartford than it is at Richmond, is you have to build very high bridges if you're going to do that, or tunnels. So we're also talking with the PLA about how we might sort of regulate their shipping, what might be happening in the future. So there's actually quite a lot going on river. And we've got something like 5 or 6 times as many people using the river now for transport as they were 10 or 15 years ago. So there's a big coherent strategy happening.
Right, we've got a roving microphone. Does anyone have a question? Yes, over here.
Hello.
Hello.
Friends of the Earth, Jenny Bates, London campaigner, our air pollution campaigner. So why has Transport for London not looked at a comprehensive package of alternatives for East London? And I don't mean discarding individual schemes, which is what you've done, but instead a max package of London-wide road user charging, more walking and cycling, a non-road max package. Because as you know, if you allow more traffic, even at certain times of day, that will overall mean worse congestion in the area. The pattern of congestion may change, you may alleviate it on the approach roads, but you know that it will overall, at junctions further afield, make congestion worse, which is not good for business, and air pollution would also be worse, which we can't afford to do with 10,000 people dying early a year. You haven't looked at a public transport non-road max, and why couldn't you do that, please?
Well, there's kind of lots of work gone on previously looking at public transport options. And as I said, in the last 20 years, a lot of public transport has gone in. We have looked at, could we just charge Blackwall Tunnel, provide a congestion charge, or rather than actually try to restrain traffic rather than actually provide a resilience. One of the problems is that you've got kind of 20 kilometres between the Blackwall Tunnel and Dartford, and the whole of the Thames Gateway is growing. So what happens is when you have that congestion, it creates congestion around the network, particularly when you have so many incidents at the Blackwall Tunnel. So just charging Blackwall on its own wouldn't provide that resilience that we believe we need. We are providing a public transport package as part of this river crossings package. We're looking at, as I said, 40 buses an hour through Blackwall, through Silvertown, and we're also looking at potentially the DLR and buses at Belvedere and Galleons as well. So I would dispute the fact that we would create congestion elsewhere, and I know this is controversial, but the actual use of the toll, the charge that we place on it, will help us manage traffic in the right way. And yes, without that charge, we do believe there will be extra congestion. At the moment, you have congestion every single day at Blackwall Tunnel, and a stationary vehicle, or a vehicle in traffic, emits twice as much NOx as a moving vehicle. Yeah. And if we can stop that happening, we hopefully make an improvement on air quality and congestion.
If it's moving, it's better, for a given amount of traffic, it's better that it moves than it's stationary. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that you have to add to traffic. And your own figures do show you would expect worse congestion at some of the junctions further away. I'm afraid it shows that.
We're going to move on to another question.
Sure, yeah. Hi, Ben Wilkinson, architectural consultant. Great talk. Nice to hear that you're looking to open up East London a little bit. I hear lots of talk about tunnels there. And tunnels don't tend to be so great for cyclists. What's the intention with regards to opening up East London, sort of north of the river to south of the river for the cyclists here, of which I'm one?
Yeah, so the whole tunnel concept, this big announcement, this is what a lot of this exhibition is kind of about. And it's about putting sort of car traffic under the road, but using the space above the ground to for cycling, for walking, for urban realm, for parks, but also for commercial opportunities as well. So the idea with the strategic road tunnels is that you provide a better environment above ground because you're removing a lot of that traffic. And it comes back to Jenny's point, actually. If you just increase capacity, you'll get more vehicles. But if you increase capacity at the same time as reducing the capacity that was previously there, then that's the way that you manage the traffic. In terms of crossings for East London, we'd absolutely look for pedestrians and cycle crossings, both at Belvedere and at Galleons. If it's a tunnel, we might have to look at whether we provide a separate It would probably be an immersed tube, but a separate box for that. We can't really do it at Silvertown. It's not a nice environment. What we have done at Silvertown is provide the Emirates airline. What we need to do is to make sure more people use it during the peak, our traditional peak times, because it is more of a kind of a leisure and tourism activity. But as the Greenwich Peninsula and the Royal Docks grows, I think you'll see greater usage of cycle crossings. And we're also looking, things like the Rotherhithe Canary Wharf crossing that will be spoken about in a minute, and the opportunities for ferry crossings as well, taking peds and cycles. So there's quite a lot being done. And when we talk about river crossings, as I say, it isn't just about highways.
Last question to say.
Lovely. Michael Daniels, I'm a Rotherhithe resident. I'm very pleased that you're looking to progress the Rotherhithe Canary Wharf river crossing. Now that is going to take a little time. There is an improvement which you can make immediately, and it exists at the moment. Now the London Overground between Rotherhithe and Wapping, at the moment you have to pay to cross the river, and it creates a real blockage. Now if the fares were freed up just between Rotherhithe and Wapping, cyclists could put their bicycle on the overground, go under the river, up the other side, so could pedestrians. It would have very little detrimental effect on revenue, but it could be a real economic boost both sides of the river and would improve permeability.
Wow.
What are your views?
Wow, free fares, no fares.
Just underneath the river there.
All I can say is that it's not a concept that we've been developing so far. I can certainly take that away, but you have to be careful about setting precedents as well, I think. If you make some parts of the network free and other parts not free, it's kind of not a simple message. I thought what you were going to say was actually, in the meantime, you might improve the ferry service across, and that's something that we are looking at with Sustrans in the kind of the more immediate term. But I think you'll find that Annette's ideas for a new crossing aren't that far away, actually. So hopefully we won't have to wait too long for that.
We just have one final question, a quick question.
Yeah, my name's Corinne Edwards. I live in Stamford Street in Waterloo, and I've been there since 1986. I've seen all the transport horrendous problems. I want to mention about the Garden Bridge. I'm one of demented enemies of Boris, but I want to know how you can justify spending 60 million of public money on a private enterprise, which doesn't have a cycle route, by the way. You won't see any cyclists, or rare cyclists, up and down the South Bank. So it's a private thing, no right of way.
Well, the Garden Bridge is the £60 million. TfL are actually limiting their liability for that. So we're looking to get as much of the private funding as we can, and the more private funding comes in, the less TfL will have to put into that. And George Osborne also announced that the government will be putting money into this as well. But predominantly the funds will become from the Garden Bridge Trust that are raising this, and raising money through sort of private finance. Now, we have, I know again there's been lots of discussion about the Garden Bridge, but we had to do a thorough business case on this, and it's not just about the transport improvements it brings, it's about the economic benefits that we believe will happen as a result of that. People and bringing tourism trade is huge for London, and I believe that the Garden Bridge will help add to that tourism to help London prosper more. So I think, I wasn't privy to the actual decisions that were being made about whether public money should go in or out, but I can absolutely see the rationale for that, because sometimes you have to put public money in to get private investment in as well, and I think that's part of the story there. I thought you were outside. I didn't realise you were inside. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for that. So our last speaker is Annette Jezierska, who is the Senior Development Officer at Sustrans, and is going to be speaking about the Rotherhithe to Canary Wharf Bridge.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great stuff. So I'm Annette, I'm from Sustrans, which is the national walking and cycling charity, and actually today is my last day after 4 years at Sustrans. So it's a bit of a time for reflection. I've been working on a particular river crossing, as Matt mentioned. But I just want to talk you through sort of my experience of the 4 years. So one of the biggest things that I hate is being called a cyclist. I was never a cyclist. I'm just somebody who gets around by bike. I actually had no idea you could cycle through central London on a bicycle, and I grew up in London. All I knew was the underground and the bus network. But it turns out cycling is fast and it's cheap and it's better. It makes you feel great. So what I've seen in these 4 years, which has been an amazing 4 years, there's been a remarkable change in London. We've gone through a turning point where you've probably noticed on the embankment, on Blackfriars Bridge, on Tottenham High Street, there are these incredible cycle routes being built as we speak. Change is massive. I don't know if you've been able to ride them, but the experience that you get by being on these routes is something else. It's really something else. And you're seeing whole families cycling across Vauxhall Gyratory now. I would never have imagined this happening 4 years ago. So why is this all happening? Now, we know Boris loves cycling personally, but is that enough, really? He's a serious politician. He's competing with George Osborne. I don't think so. There have been a lot of deaths of cyclists, people like you and me. And cycling is growing in popularity, but really he's understood that cycling is a form of mass transport and it is key to allowing this city to grow. It's an efficient way to get around, it's cost effective. So for all of the good of this cycling infrastructure, there's been a lot of criticism around congestion, and we've just been talking about congestion. Some of the congestion associated with the cycle delivery is going to drop off after 2016, when some of the big roads have finished their cycle routes and there are cyclists using them. But congestion, as we talked about, it is just kind of like deadlines or budgets. You will work to them. You will use everything you can. If you build roads, cars will follow. You can put in measures to control that, but ultimately, if you increase road capacity, you will get more congestion. The reverse is true as well. If you take away road capacity, there's this thing called disappearing traffic. You'll take away congestion. But what I'm trying to say is that however much London grows, there's always going to be congestion on the road network. It's just how much do we really want to see, how much is acceptable. So we know that cycling is massively increasing, car use is in decline, public transport is at capacity, but we've got this population growth. So last year, as Matt said, we were working with Matt's team actually quite closely and other key stakeholders. We also worked with Reform Architects, who published their idea for a design, who are here in the room. We were looking at Sustrans' idea for building a bridge over the Thames at Canary Wharf to Rotherhithe. This is an old idea, it goes back to the Olympics, as you'll know. But a lot has changed since then. It was an amazing experience. Everyone loves talking about a bridge. And it's kind of more exciting than a tunnel or a ferry, of course. It's also been a great experience because we've been looking at future-proofing infrastructure and building something that's new rather than retrofitting. And most of what Sustrans does, we're a charity, but we also do commercial work, and most of that is retrofitting. So it's been a great opportunity to start shaping the city in a direction that is very, very bold and different. So where this bridge is, what it will do is allow people to get across this river, and the key point is it goes from about Canada Water tube station, which is on the Jubilee line, to Canary Wharf. These are the journeys that are going to benefit from that, from this bridge. At the moment on the Jubilee line, it's one of the most overcrowded lines in London, which is saying something. Each commuter gets about the space of a caged hen. It's quite cramped. And at the moment, the town centre has just been planning permission to deliver a town centre over the tube station. So where are these people all going to go? So the work that we did on the bridge, we found a few remarkable things. So firstly, of course, it can be built. And it can be built by 2020, so that's 4 years away. That's pretty much in the time that I've been at Sustrans. It would enable 3 million journeys a year to go over the river at that place, making it one of the most popular river crossings for people on bike and foot in London. There's massive support. We were talking to Simon Hughes, the old MP of the area, and he said that the single issue that he got the most emails on from the whole of his career as MP, which was quite long, was this bridge. we found out that it was excellent value for money. For every £1 that you put in, you get £2 of benefits back, and that is just from transport. The cost of the bridge is about £88 million as a base cost, and that gets uplifted to about £250 million full project cost. So that's about comparable to the Garden Bridge, a little bit more because it's technically much more complex because it has to open about 3 times a day. But possibly one of the most intriguing things that we found out was that we were getting interest from developers and landowners in the area. And now this isn't something that happens every day in Sustrans. We do walking and cycling. But there was clearly an interest. And to be completely cynical, this was all about profit. There is profit there in delivering a strategic transport link like this. Bureau Happold had done some work on this. You get about a 10% land value uplift in the area, and that will cover the cost of the bridge. It also boosts retail, so Canary Wharf is a shopping centre, and it will allow people to get over the river to go and shop at Canary Wharf. It also gives the Isle of Dogs, which is the fastest growing place in the UK, to get another route out to central London or beyond. So this bridge, it's a strategic transport connection. It will unlock housing, that is demonstrated already. It will relieve congestion on the overcrowded Jubilee line. It is wanted in the local community. There's no pollution attached to it at all. It's really good value for money. And it's finally one of the crossings that everyone can get behind from all sectors. And we've seen that. So Zach and Sadiq have already said they like the idea, they want this to happen. And we know that TfL are pretty supportive too. So we're pretty excited by this. So the other river crossings. So this is really about London's development and what are these crossings for? And for me, this is people and goods, really. Going back to the things that we talked about before, so we know that cycling is increasing massively. It's a form of transport that is mass transport now, and it is only going to increase. And actually, the number of cyclists is going to overtake the number of people in cars quite soon. We're at this turning point where we're finally building for people on foot and bike first. We're not putting roads first and vehicular traffic first. And this is a real historical moment. And we know that if you build roads, you get more congestion. But then there's another sort of thing to this. So innovation is something we need to think about. The lifespan of a bridge is about 60 years. What happens in 30 years' time? For public transport, you've got Elon Musk working on frictionless trains, which is incredible. It will mean, why do you need to get in a taxi if you can be somewhere in 3 minutes across the river? Freight. Now that's a key thing. That is much of the congestion that is happening at Blackwall Tunnel. Does it need to get across the river? Why shouldn't it go along the river instead? There are more alternatives here. If you introduce consolidation centres, you can bring down freight traffic by about 80%. There are way more alternatives here than building new roads for these vehicles. So for me, the river crossings is it's less about what are these crossings for, it's about how do we want to see London develop to the east. Do we want to be in the position where in 30 years' time we're trying to avoid buying a house on a really busy junction which is full of congestion, whatever vehicles they might be, electric or driverless, whatever. We can see this growth, we can take the opportunity and actually make these crossings better for people on foot and bike and prioritise those beyond vehicular traffic. And it will also mean that Sustrans doesn't have to keep retrofitting. We don't want to be in a position where we're retrofitting these roads in 30 years' time as well. So very soon, Sustrans is launching a campaign to win support for our bike bridge. We're going to be going to the mayoral candidates, asking them to support this. So as it's my last day today, please take the opportunity to come and speak to me or my colleagues, Matt and Herman, in the audience. If you've got skills that you can offer, time, funding, or networking. Thanks very much.
I'm conscious we're just coming up to time, so does anyone have questions that they'd like to put to Annette?
I only half heard what you said about at what point will there be more journeys made by bike than by people in cars?
Oh, it was in the
point? 'Cause
news like yesterday. Does
Yeah.
anyone know? Good question.
It's central London. You
we have to be careful with the statistics. So.
The picture changes quite a lot. Matt knows more about that than probably anyone in the room, but the picture changes as you move across London. So central London, there are places in central London we have more bicycles than cars, about 70 to 30%. And of course, as you move away, it's the picture starts changing. The real difficulty is outer London. Outer London is still very much dominated by the car because transport provision is difficult because of the spread. So it's getting there. It's growing significantly, more and more at a very quick rate. And we have started seeing places where you get this tipping point. You get more bicycles than cars. But there's still a lot of work to do, especially in outer London.
And is this the sort of model that you think could be applied elsewhere in London?
Absolutely. So this bridge, there's already demand for it. There's already people who just want to get over the river, go to work in Canary Wharf. It's linking homes to jobs, new homes to jobs as well that are going to be delivered by 2020. Where are they going to go? This is the first one. But once you've done this, why not replicate this on other parts of the river? So we've seen Farrell's put out some ideas for alternative crossings. But the main message is put walking, cycling and public transport first. Whilst I have the opportunity, Peter Murray kindly did us a painting of the experience on the bridge. It's up on the wall over there, so please have a look.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, next week we're going to be looking at cycling, so we're going to have another Soapbox talk looking at that, so do book yourself on to come along. Check out the exhibition. We have a section here looking at river crossings and future proposals, and also we have a voting section here where you can put in your vote for whether London needs more river crossings, so please take part in that as well. Thanks to both our speakers, and thank you everyone for coming.